Hello. So, I'm not going to pretend that I'm a doctor or anything like that. I'm just simply going to share my experience with all of you. So back in October, I got sick. I couldn't figure out what it was. I kind of actually ignored the fact that my stomach was having an issue. And because I remember going out and saying I wasn't going to eat, but I thought it was like I was becoming lactose intolerant or something, because everything I ate just went right through me. And so I remember a specific day that we went out and I did not eat all day because I was afraid. And where we were at, it was like just porta potties, and I didn't want to use a porta potty. I know it started in my stomach, but at the time I didn't know that it started in my stomach. I just woke up one morning and had almost like a cut in my mouth, and it burned. And then little by little, it just started moving all over my mouth, my tongue, my gums. It like stretching my tongue felt like stretching, like my tongue was just dry and cracked, and everything hurt except water. Like water was like my only thing. And then when I ate, I had to eat like mashed potatoes or something like really soft, and soups and stuff like that. And so I just became sicker and sicker and sicker. And I went to Yale New Haven Hospital. I went to my primary care doctor, who's affiliated with Yale, who then sent me to an oral specialist, because at first they thought it was candida and the medicine that they gave me wasn't working. So they sent me to this oral specialist who actually put me on trimethylsilicone or something like that. And then from there, they took several biopsies. And at first, they were trying to rule out throat cancer. So of course you can imagine the anxiety level, right? So then after that, they said, no, it was something else that begins with like a P. And I'm gonna butcher the name, but basically what they told me was that the lesions that were all over my mouth was eventually going to spread. It was gonna come out of my mouth, it was gonna cover my skin, and then eventually it would move over to my brain. So it was really important to get me on the medication that I needed to get on, because eventually the lesions will cover my brain, and that's when it would become a real issue, right? So imagine the anxiety. I would go to these doctor's appointments and I would come home frantic, crying and stressed out. And I remember like expressing that in the office, and the doctor just looked at me and said, hey, just be happy, it's not cancer, which I thought was very insensitive. So then after that, I ended up going to a rheumatologist, because the oral specialist said that they couldn't help me, that I really needed to see a rheumatologist. So I went to a rheumatologist, and when I went to the rheumatologist, they were very kind. It wasn't that anybody mistreated me or anything like that. It was just that they didn't have any answers either. And so they kind of ruled out that I had what was called Lichen Planus, and you can Google that. I will leave a description in the comment below. But Lichen Planus is pretty much an autoimmune disease that results in lesions in your mouth or a rash all over your body. And so the result of that was that I was going to need to stay on medication, and if the medication was working, then what was I worried about? And the medication had lessened the symptoms, but it wasn't taking care of me all the way around. I was just becoming more sicker. Then in early January this year, I fell into a bout of depression, and I got on my knees, and I remember praying, and I remember telling God that I needed healing. Gonna get emotional. That I needed healing. And every message afterwards I kept getting was transparency, transparency, transparency. So I was hosting these 5 a.m. prayer calls, and on the 5 a.m. prayer calls, I came out and I said that I was suffering from Lichen Planus, and that I had this autoimmune disease, and that I needed everyone to pray for me. And so from there, I know that it was in January that I had decided to fast. So in January, while I was fasting, our church does like a 21-day fast, and during that 21-day fast, I noticed that I was actually feeling good. And like my body was getting better, my symptoms were becoming less, and I didn't even make the connection of the two. So from there, I was starting to feel better, but in January they had made an appointment for me to see the rheumatologist, but the rheumatologist was like going to be months of waiting. So I think I was going to see them in like June or something like that, from January to June. And then they wanted me to see a gastrologist, one of the doctors that kind of deals with the gut. And then they wanted me to see a dermatologist. So I went to all of these doctors. Like I told you, I went to the rheumatologist. They were very kind, but then they said, you know what, sorry, we're gonna have to send you to someone who would study the stomach, the gastro doctor, because we think that they could help you. And then they ran more tests. So I had I don't know how much in debt I am to New Haven Hospital, but I'm on a monthly installment plan to pay them off for absolutely no resolution, just triamcinolone paste, dental paste that I was able to put on my tongue just to help me get through my eating. So from there, I had to wait months to get to the gastro doctor. I had to take my daughter with me to the gastro doctor because at this point I'm extremely emotional. But I had continued praying, and I asked God to help me find the healing that I was looking for. And a friend of mine, she went to a doctor that was a Chinese medicine doctor, and I believe in science, so I was a little skeptical about Chinese medicine, but I did go, and she gave me, she asked for all of my blood work and sent me for more blood work. So this is like in the interim while I'm waiting to see these other specialists, right? Which is the gastro doctor, because at this point I had already seen the oral specialist and I had already seen the rheumatologist, and neither of them could help me. So then I ended up going to the Chinese doctor. She had given me a list of vitamins because my blood work, Yale New Haven saw all of my blood work. No one ever mentioned that I was deficient in any of these vitamins, but she noticed that I was deficient in a lot of vitamins. So she gave me some vitamins to take, and so I was desperate at this point. I was like, you know what, I'll try it. So I started taking these vitamins, and these vitamins actually started to help reduce some of the symptoms. But the Chinese medicine doctor said, you know what, all of this stems from your gut. So I continue praying, and I am at my studio because I'm a photographer. So I go to my studio to work one day, and one of the women in my studio, Sandy, which I want to mention her because this literally saved my life. She mentioned to me to go see her nutritionist. Now, I thought nutritionist was basically all about just being on a diet to drop pounds, right? So, but Sandy had shared with me her experience with the nutritionist, and she had read on Facebook what I was struggling with. Remember, God told me to be transparent, right? So he told me to be transparent. I put it out on Facebook. She read it, and so when she saw me come into the studio, she told me, I read your status and I want to share something with you, and I'm praying for you. And so she shared with me her nutritionist information. I went to her nutritionist and on the first visit, I gotta admit, I was a little skeptical because I just kind of felt like, and it was like $400 for your initial visit, but your initial visit actually handles initial one and session 1 and session 2. So session 1 is really just asking a lot of questions. You leave paying this heavy bill, and then you come back. But I'm desperate, right? So I'm gonna stick this through, and I'm gonna follow this through. So on the next visit, she's putting minerals and things in my hands, and with one, it's like the special science that they do, and they push your hand down, and technically your body tells them what your body needs. And there's a science, and I'm not going to do any justice on describing it. But what was interesting is, remember how I said that I had transferred my blood work over to the Chinese doctor, and she looked at all of this blood work and she explained it to me thoroughly, and she was the one who told me to go see a nutritionist. She told me that there was a lot of yeast in my gut. Now, at this point, I haven't seen the gastro doctor yet, so I am like 2 weeks into working with the nutritionist, and immediately pounds are just like melting off, like really, really fast. And so I go to the gastro doctor, and I'm talking to the gastro doctor. I take my daughter with me because I'm really, really emotional. So I go to see her, and I'm just like stumped. I can't even talk because the gastro doctor, I'm telling her, listen, my blood work came back that there's a lot of yeast. When I did when I worked with the nutritionist didn't even have to look at my blood work. She just did her science that she does, and she was able to determine that I had a lot of fungus in my system and a lot of metals, and so I needed to detox all this stuff out. Now I'm telling the gastro doctor this. She tells me that all of it is my gallbladder, assumption that it is my gallbladder, and that she was going to run some test. And so she had to do like one of those fecal tests. I know, gross. I'm sharing a lot of information, but this is important. So she sends me out for this testing, but the end summary of that appointment was that she said that if it was my gallbladder, that I could either take this medication so that way I can continue eating as normally as I do, and that all my symptoms would go away, but to keep in mind that there would be other symptoms as a result of taking this medication. And so she said, do you want to try it and test it out for a week? And so she gave me the prescription, but she told me that I had to stop working with the nutritionist, because the nutritionist gave me a bunch of enzymes and minerals for me to take to help with the detoxing of the metals and the fungus that I had in my system while I was on this diet. And so when I left the doctor's appointment, the end result was that she said, if it works, then you're just gonna have to live on this medicine for the rest of your life, because your mouth is connected to your gut. The symptoms that you had in your mouth is definitely your body telling you that there's an issue with your gut. And so I ended up going back to the nutritionist. I never picked up the prescription, and I stayed with the nutritionist. Now, here's the thing. Remember I told you that I prayed, and God kept directing all these things. So I remember sitting down and just thinking about, like I prayed for this, and then God brought me here and then introduced me to this person and this person. I think this nutritionist is the way I'm supposed to go. And simultaneously at that point when I am working on this brain thought process, it hits me that I'm actually studying in the book of Daniel how Daniel was on a fast, and how the fast, when the king came to look at him while he was on this fast and he was eating clean, that the king could see on him his appearance, his physical appearance, and that set him apart from everyone else. And so I felt like God was saying, I am trying to set you apart. But also keep in mind that God gives gifts to people with the intention that he's going to help, that those people are going to help other people. So I am sharing this information with the intention that, like God gave me a gift, and that gift was healing, and it was through this process. And so I am sharing this with you. So if you are having any type of autoimmune diseases or been diagnosed with them, that you go see a nutritionist, because I have learned that food is our medicine and that it can save you. So now, just to give you an idea, and this is going to be completely transparent, so this might seem a little gross, but I got rid of issues that I didn't even realize that I had. Now, am I 100% cured? No, I still have some fungus and some metals in my system, but I have literally dropped 22 pounds. And 22 pounds out of my body, which I believe the majority of that was just like fungus and metals, just detoxing. My skin is a lot better. I did not realize when I went to the dermatologist that I had some hair loss over here on the side, and it was really thinning out, and they chucked it off to the aging process because I'm 45 years old. And so they told me that it's due to aging, and my eyebrows are falling out. It's all part of the aging process. But my hair started to grow back in once I started feeding my body the appropriate things that I needed to feed it. Like I wasn't pulling up my hair anymore. Now I'm pulling up my hair. Not just that, my skin is better. I actually had one toenail that had gone completely white. Now it just looks like a normal toenail. I also went to the gynecologist on a regular. I used to use this thing called Refresh because they said that my pH balance was off, and that was why I had some discharge. I know, I'm kind of embarrassed sharing that, but it is what it is. I have not had that. I have not had to turn to Monistat. I haven't had a yeast infection throughout this entire time that I have been eating clean. I haven't had, the nutritionist told me about the deodorants having metals in them, and she said, please don't use those deodorants. Use a deodorant that doesn't have the metals. And so I switched over, but I noticed that I don't even have the same smell anymore. So it's not like I'm like before. It was like I carried deodorant with me everywhere, just in the event of, and now with the clean eating, I don't even smell the same way. So there was a whole bunch of things that like started healing in my body that I didn't even realize was an issue until I experienced healing. Once those things started to heal, then I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even know I was living in brain fog until the fog lifted, and then when I was experiencing life in this much more clear perception, I don't even know how to describe it, but it was like and don't get me wrong, I get scattered. My brain is one to go into a million places at the same time. Like my brain pattern is definitely like spaghetti, and it's like if I go down one thought, I'm on another thought, I'm on another thought, I'm on another thought. But I can see the thought process now, which is so beautiful, to be able to read a book and digest it differently, and be able to be present in the moment, and be able to register everything around me, including the smells and the feeling and everything. And so I am now on this path to healing. My tongue is actually pretty much good. Like before, I couldn't even have ketchup. I couldn't, because believe it or not, ketchup has vinegar in it, and vinegar burned. But that went away in itself. So there was a lot of things that healed. So if you are suffering from any type of autoimmune disease or anything, and I'm not throwing any shade, but I am literally in debt to Yale New Haven Hospital, and I had no results other than a list of medications that they were suggesting that I live on permanently. I go to a nutritionist and I start cleaning out my gut, and now all of a sudden I don't need any medication. I don't even need like the normal hygiene stuff that I was going to the store for on a regular, because let me tell you, I struggled in that department. And so like I like underneath my kitchen sink is like literally boxes of Monistat, because it was on a regular that I had a yeast infection, and doctor said it was completely normal. It is. I think they've been lying to me. Anyway, so I'm on my path to healing. I have been sharing this information on one-on-one basis because I've been wanting to see the results before I recommended it to my friends. I wanted to know if it worked because I was skeptical about it. But now, to wrap this all up, tonight I'm doing a whole study tonight on Daniel, and I'm just reading everything about him and how God is literally setting him apart, and how he uses Daniel for demonstrating his glory. And at no point does Daniel take credit for what he's doing, like even when he interprets the king's dream. And if you haven't read the story, go to Daniel and just read the story. King has a bad dream and he wants someone to interpret it, but he doesn't want to tell people the dream. If you look at Daniel's response, Daniel responds with, no man on earth, no medium, no magician, no one can tell you what you dreamed, but my God can tell you what you dreamed, and he can tell you the interpretation of your dream. And then that's when Daniel speaks, never once taking any credit for anything, but how God sets him apart to demonstrate his glory on the earth. And so I am looking around at the people in my environment, and I'm noticing that a friend of mine, he even changed his nutrition as well, and he's actually beating a lot of the symptoms of MS with his nutrition. Like his wife did a lot of research. God bless his wife. She did a lot of research, and she's actually finding ways of making sure that because they didn't want to give him his medication for a long time. It was during the whole, pandemic. So he was finding an alternate way to take care of himself, and it was through nutrition. And he found it, and now he can't see going back to eating any other way, because he himself has realized that food is medicine. And that's exactly how God intended for us to treat our environment and our earth, is to use it like everything is medicine. The problem is that our people perish because of a lack of knowledge. So now you know. Now I know, and I feel like God is setting me apart. My friends are all being set apart as well. I feel like a lot of them, young and old, are all on this discovery of learning what God is trying to teach us through nutrition. And for some of you, you might call it science or anything else. God steered me here. God was the one who brought me to my healing. He introduced me to certain people, because if he hadn't told me in that moment to be transparent and to tell people about my struggle, I would not have been led to I would have been led to Sandy, but Sandy wouldn't have known what I was going through, and she wouldn't have told me where to go. And my friend wouldn't have told me about her doctor who teaches, he does Chinese medicine. And all of these kind of things, it's just all the dots connect so beautifully, and I can see God's fingerprint all over it. And again, this morning, it's just in my prayer time, and just listening to God, and God's, there's a lot of people who are praying for answers and answers and answers, and if you're not getting an answer, if you go to James, it's because of the motive of your heart, because you're looking in your own selfish gain. And God wants to bless people that are going to turn around and pour that blessing, like he wants to use his people to further bless the earth. And so I want to be that person, and I want to share that testimony with the world around me, however transparent it is and kind of personal. I don't care. I just want you to be blessed by this information. Go see a nutritionist. If you want more information about the nutritionist that I used and the doctors that I used on my healing process throughout this autoimmune so-called disease, which I don't believe I have anymore by the grace of God, because he had directed me to learn all this stuff about nutrition. I will send you all of that information, but I really hope it blesses you. And thank you for watching this video in its entirety. I know it is pretty long, and I haven't posted anything in a long time, and if I posted anything, I wanted it to be something of value that was going to bless the world around me, and I really think this is it. God is setting his people aside. He's setting them apart, and I'm honored to be a part of the few that is being set apart, and I hope that you will join me on this journey. And it's an expensive one. That's kind of like the downside about it, but I don't think we should be questioning how expensive our food is when we go for food of good value. I think we should be questioning why they price everything that is killing us so cheaply. I think that's the bigger question, but I'll leave that to you to ponder in your prayer times. God bless you. I'll talk to you soon.